Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it's greatly appreciated. The People's Voice podcast is an investigative news podcast where I'm dedicated to covering stories and social issues that I feel have either been buried or underreported by mainstream and social media. The purpose of the podcast is to highlight those issues, offer some insightful analysis, recommendations, and some possible actionable solutions to address those issues. The People's Voice podcast can be heard on all podcast platforms, and we also put a video out every week on YouTube as well for those who would like to watch the podcast. But in any event, we say welcome, and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today, I want to get into the topic of car insurance. I want to talk about car insurance here in the United States. But specifically, I want to talk about the discriminatory practices that many, and I'm not overstating that, many insurance companies utilize when it comes to providing car insurance to residents here in the United States, specifically when we start talking about brown and black and lower income residents. So that's what I want to talk about today, car insurance discrimination. And I'm talking about this because there is a story, or was a story, I'm sure it's still ongoing, but it was a story produced last month by the Detroit News. And in this story, they highlighted a company that provides what is advertised as low-cost insurance. And this insurance company, specifically in their marketing and advertising, targets lower income or low-income drivers, and specifically many drivers who live in Black and brown communities in Detroit and in the Detroit metro area. And so I want to talk about that story, and then I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in terms of the insurance industry as a whole, in terms of how they screen and assess car insurance policies, and then talk a little bit about what's being done to address some of those issues and to try to curb some of these discriminatory practices. So, as I said, there was an article that came out in the Detroit News last month, and it was actually reposted on the Michigan Public NPR site. And in that article, they talked about this specific company, which is called Cure Auto Insurance. Now, I've never heard of Cure Auto Insurance prior to this story, but apparently this company has been doing business in Detroit for a few years now. And they have been accused of several different practices, everything from requesting clients and customers turn over their cell phones when they're trying to do an investigation about crashes, to basically asking them to relinquish the title to their car and the physical car themselves and not paying claims. In the story itself, from the article in the Detroit News, they talk about this tactic that they use where they do not provide, or where they ask customers to relinquish their titles in their cars after they call in to make a claim. So basically what has been going on is that customers will call and say, hey, I've been in an accident. I want to, put in a claim. The insurance company, will take the claim, come out, send out the adjuster. The adjuster will determine that the car's totaled, and it's going to have to be, scrapped, and you'll have to get reimbursed for your car. But what is happening is that they are telling the customer that they've been approved, that the claim has been approved. But in order for the payment to happen, you're going to have to turn over the title of the car and also relinquish possession of the car. So customers are turning over the title and having the car towed to, one of the auto shops within the auto insurers network. And then they call the customer back and say, well, sorry, your claim has been denied. As a matter of fact, we're canceling your policy. And when this happens, of course, now you have clients who do not have a car, do not have the title, and do not have money to get a new one, which obviously is putting many of these individuals in a deep bind because, again, you have this company who specifically, or not specifically, but heavily advertises towards lower income drivers with the promise that they will get the lowest cost of insurance out of, any other, or they'll provide the lowest cost of insurance out of any other insurance company. And this has been going on for quite some time. In this same article, they talked about that this company called Cure Auto Insurance, which ironically is based out of New Jersey, and is doing business in the Detroit metro region. But it says that this company has had the 5th highest number of lawsuits filed against it in Detroit since between 2022 and 2025. So this is truly an issue that needs to be highlighted and have a lot of attention put to it. Not only are they doing that, but as I mentioned when I started, they also have a process where in some cases they've asked the customers to turn over their cell phones in order for them to complete their investigation. Matter of fact, this was talked about by Jeff Irwin, who is who's a senator for the 15th district in Ann Arbor, and he talked about this at a recent Senate meeting this month in Michigan. So let me play this about the cell phones, and then I'll continue on and go from there.
Interested in a further conversation about whether the legislature can actually help the department make sure that people aren't getting policies that violate the law and aren't protective of their interests, because that's what the law is supposed to do. And so if we could be helpful with that, maybe the department needs resources to actually do that part of the job, because it sounds like we're just kind of hoping that it works out and trusting the insurance companies. Here's my second question. What I'm hearing about in public is about a policy where insurance companies are essentially requiring their customers to turn over their cell phones for investigations related to a claim. Is there anything does DIFS have concern about that? Is that something that you've looked into? It seems like it must violate the law, but maybe not. What can you tell me about this policy? Is there anything DIFS can do to make sure that people don't have to jump through this particular hoop in order to, reveal information that they may not want to reveal in order to have their claims processed properly?
Yeah. So just to cap the last question too, in the underwriting stuff, there's a lot of things I think you could do on the underwriting side. I know we've had several conversations with Chair Kavanaugh on things like underwriting transparency, prohibiting post-claim underwriting practices. On the cell phone issue, I'd love to learn more about that. I'm not aware of a specific case, but if there's a consumer that has one and wants to send it our way, we could take a look at it. But yeah, that seems unusual to me.
And again, this was brought up by the Senate, a senator or one of the senators in Michigan, Ann Arbor, where he's been getting complaints from some of his constituents about this company and several other companies asking customers for their cell phones in order to complete investigations before claims are paid. Not only is it happening in Detroit, but this is a nationwide issue when it comes to insurance, and specifically when it comes to insurance discrimination in terms of pricing and premium costs. Matter of fact, in that same Senate hearing, Doug Heller, who is with the Consumer Federation of America, he is their director of insurance. He talked about what is going on in Detroit and in Michigan. He talked about the discriminatory practices when it comes to insurance companies utilizing zip code pricing to determine how much they're going to charge customers. So let me play a little bit about that, and then I can go into detail about some of the other things that are being utilized to determine insurance premiums. And then I'll close out from there. But this is Doug Heller with the Consumer Federation of America, the director of their insurance.
Territories after the law changed, pricing drivers not on the zip code they live in, but the smaller geography of their census tract, or even the smaller census tract block group. So, for example, I looked at pricing in zip code 48208 in Detroit, right around Wayne State, using the rating rules of one of the largest insurers in the state. And while it's interesting, I think, to note that on average, the neighborhood right around the university there in Detroit faces premiums that are more than double what you find around another university community in Ann Arbor, what is most striking is what now happens within that single Detroit zip code. That this insurance company breaks 48208 zip into 12 micro territories. And if you live in the micro territory that is very low income, 97% Black resident census tract block group, your premium will be about 5 times higher than if you lived a few blocks closer to the university in the neighborhood that is majority white with a median income 4 times higher than that first neighborhood. That's thousands of dollars more per year to comply with state law, even though you live in the same exact zip code, just the wrong neighborhood.
Now, the question I raise is this America?
And this is America, and this is something that's going on. And so let me give that a little bit more context. So in 2019, in the state of Michigan, there was a law passed that basically outlawed zip code pricing for insurance, because zip code assessment is one of the ways that these insurance companies determine how much you will pay for your car insurance. And they found that this was very discriminatory. So in 2019, there was a law passed in Michigan that was signed by Governor Whitmer, which was no fault auto insurance reform legislation, which basically was to assist with lowering the amount of rates or premium, lowering the amount that these drivers would pay for premiums. To get around this particular law, these insurance companies said, okay, well, in Michigan, we won't use zip code assessment. We'll even break it down further from a micro perspective, and we'll go into that zip code to see exactly where Black and brown and lower income people live within that zip code. And we will then assess a premium rate to those individuals. So now you have even a deeper form of discrimination, if you will, because now if you live in the same zip code and you're a white person, you're going to pay less for your insurance than you would if you were a Black or brown person or even a lower income person. And this is a common practice, not just in terms of the micro, but from a zip code standpoint. This is something that has been going on for decades, which is why it's very discriminatory when you start talking about insurance. Matter of fact, there was a study done by MoneyGeek this year where they looked at over they looked at 1,600 zip codes in their assessment. They looked at 1,600 zip codes in their assessment, which covered over 69 cities. And when they completed their assessment, they basically found out that out of those 69 cities, 75% of those cities that were majority Black or brown or lower income people, those individuals, those residents were paying substantially more for their auto insurance than residents who lived in the same state but in different zip codes, or I should say white residents who lived in different zip codes. Matter of fact, in that study, they showed that in terms of cities, one of the highest discrepancies in terms of the amount of insurance that was paid when they based it on zip codes, they found that in New Orleans, drivers who lived in zip codes that were either Black or brown or lower income individuals, that they paid almost $891 more per year than individuals who lived, or for those residents who lived in zip codes where the residents were primarily white. Matter of fact, this was repeated in other cities as well. They have Louisville, Kentucky, Baltimore, Maryland, Milwaukee, Phoenix, and it goes on and on and on. So these discriminatory practices have been going on and still continue to go on to this day. Some other factors that are utilized in determining insurance. I'm reading here from the Insurance Information Institute, where they've listed the several criterias that insurance companies use. Insurance companies use everything from your driving record, how much you use your car, location, your age, your gender, the car you drive, and then they even use your credit and the type of auto insurance that you are requesting, of course. But in addition, there are other factors that are being used as well. And there's been legislation that's been put forth by House of Representative Rashid Tlaib, who coincidentally is out of Michigan, because I'm sure her constituents have been on her about this, but she reintroduced a bill which is called the PAID Act, and PAID is an acronym for Prohibit Auto Insurance Discrimination. She put this act together along with representatives from New Jersey and California, which addresses the discriminatory practices that are being used by these insurance companies. In addition, not only are they trying to rid zip code pricing in other states as well, because it's already been outlawed in Michigan, even though, as you heard, that they have found a way to get around that. But she also wants to outlaw in that bill that she's proposed insurance companies being prohibited from using occupation, education level, employment status, home ownership status. And these are all things and factors that are being utilized that are very discriminatory, especially when you start talking about home ownership status and things of that nature, because obviously, not obviously, but here in this country, there are more, in terms of home ownership, skews higher for white residents than it does for residents of color. So if you're using these type of points to determine how much insurance is going to be required to pay, or what that premium is going to be, you're going to have these outrageous cost and fluctuations between those who don't have homes or are not homeowners and those who are homeowners. And, you know, based on that MoneyGeek study that I kind of highlighted there, you see what that discrepancy can look like in terms of money that's paid on an annual basis. So But I wanted to talk about this today. Like I said, I came across this story from the Detroit News and what was going on in Detroit. And as I started to do a little bit more research, this is too common of a practice that's occurring and needs to get as much light put on it as possible. Best way is to start locally. This is where you take this information to your local council, city council, your state representatives, obviously your state senators, to, push forth this type of legislation to outlaw these practices and make it an even playing field for everybody to be able to utilize car insurance, which if it's a requirement by the state, you have no choice but to have it. And, if you're going to have it, you want to make sure that it is at least affordable to continue, and that these insurance companies honor your claims. Because what's going on in Detroit with this company, Cure Auto Insurance, is abominable to say the least. But that's my time for today. If you want to leave a comment, you can reach me at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram. You can also leave a comment when we post a video on YouTube at I am Trey Evans. But that's my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans. The People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.